Hi, I'm Alexis Shai.
And I'm Mario Vivas.
I'm Travis Stark.
And I'm Rochelle Juarez.
Welcome to our very first edition of Brave, Sexy Government.
Today we will be going over our Unit 1 learning objectives.
Please enjoy.
Stay tuned!
Woo!
Learning Objective 1A1. Compare how various models of representative democracy are reflected through major institutions, policies, events, or debates in U.S. history.
Thank you, Travis. Although the U.S. wasn't the first nation to create a democracy, they did influence various other countries to adopt a democratic form of government similar to ours. Some argue that a democratic government doesn't represent the entire nation, but just a select few. However, America has one of the closest forms of representative democracy through the election of representatives and senators to act for the common citizen. It's not very likely that all voting citizens can voice their opinions to the nation, but having trusted representatives to do it for them is more ideal. Debates are held to give the voting citizens a chance to see what the different representatives believe and their opinions on controversial topics concerning the nation. If an elected representative does not stand by what they promised, they can be taken out of office by an extreme majority. Pluralist democracy is shown in the separation of our three branches. This allows for the system of checks and balances to prevent one branch from becoming superior over another. Sometimes large corporations influence these policies. This is an example of elite democracy. Learning Objective 1B1. Analyze and compare democratic ideals reflected in U.S. foundational documents.
Thank you, Alexis. Democratic ideals are most prevalently outlined in the Constitution. These involve the various forms of election of representatives on the federal level, such as the House of Representatives. Additionally, this population-based representation takes into account what the people want and propose laws and amendments to Congress. The people elect their state-level governors and officials who in turn elect the senators of that state. Another ideal is separation of powers, which doesn't allow one branch to overpower the other, limiting their abilities in forming, enforcing, and interpreting laws. The checks and balances system also limits powers of each branch and the overlaps of their powers.
Learning Objective B2. Compare and interpret Federalist and Anti-Federalist views on central government and democracy.
Thanks, Rochelle. Okay, so federalism favors a strong central government, and they focused on limiting state powers. They believe that the Senate was adequate and not the House of Representatives, since they favored states. They didn't think that the Bill of Rights was essential, and they believed that the Articles of Confederation was completely ineffective, so they wanted to ratify or radicalize and change it completely. They wanted a large republic and were generally supported by large farmers, merchants, and artisans, so usually the elite rich people. And anti-federalism opposed a strong central government. They believed that the state should hold precedence over the central government. They wanted the Articles of Confederation to be amended and not completely changed, and they wanted a small republic that would protect individual rights, which was later seen in the Bill of Rights, which was a requirement for them to ratify the Constitution. And supporters were generally small rural farmers and artisans, and there was few wealthy men that supported it. Learning Objective 1C1. Explain the relationship between key provisions of the Articles of Confederation and the debate over granting greater power to the federal government, formerly reserved to the states.
Thank you, Mario. Articles of Confederation supported a weak central government that could not maintain a stable, efficient society. For instance, the Articles did not allow the government to tax. Because of this, the government was unable to fund war, education, and any other affairs for the country. The government could not deal with the nation's problems because it had no control of the states. Federalists supported a strong central government that could protect the nation. Therefore, they did not support the Articles of Confederation. Anti-Federalists did not want the government to have too much power. Therefore, they did support the Articles of Confederation.
Okay.
Learning Objective 1C2. Analyze causes and effects of constitutional compromises in addressing political, economic, and regional divisions.
Okay, so the delegates of the Constitution at the convention had to make various compromises in order to accommodate the wishes of each state. So under the political divisions, there's the Virginia Plan, which was supported by large populous states, while there's also the New Jersey Plan, which was supported by small states. The small states want equal representation, so the Great Compromise was created. It combined both plans by making a bicameral legislature in which there's equal representation in the Senate and representation based off of population in the House of Representatives. He also agreed that there should be an electoral college elected by the people to vote for the president so that there wasn't bad judgment in the elections. And the regional divisions include that the South wanted the slave population to count in representation, but the North feared that they would be outnumbered, so it was agreed that the slaves would count as 3/5 of a person. But people in the North wanted to ban slavery or the slave trade for the Constitution, but the South said that it was essential to their economy, so the North agreed that they would wait 100 years until 1808, or not 100 years, wait until 1808 to ban the slave trade because they wanted to maintain unity. And then the economic divisions include the northern states wanted the government to import tariffs or impose tariffs on imported and exported goods. However, the South explained that it would hurt the economic exports, and so the Commerce Compromise said that it would only be a tariff on foreign importations and not exports.
Learning Objective 1C3. Explain how the issues raised in the ratification debate are reflected in ongoing philosophical disagreements about democracy and governmental power.
A big issue concerning ratification is whether states or federal government should decide certain laws. Federal government gets its powers from enumerated powers and implied powers, but the state gets its powers from the 10th Amendment, which is reserved rights. So the Federalists, when the Constitution was first being made, wanted it just how it was with a strong central government. However, the anti-Federalists wanted the government as more decentralized with more state powers. This is still reflected in today's society with issues like marijuana legalization, gay marriage rights, and assisted suicide. Both sides have a really good reason and claim for who the power should lie within because of these different parts of the Constitution. So the issue is going to go on in today's society for a long time. Objective D1. Evaluate the relationship between separation of powers and checks and balances.
Thank you, Rochelle. Separation of powers is a method that keeps all parts of government, exec, judicial, and legislative, independent with defined powers. Checks and balances ties into this because each branch has a defined power that overlaps with another branch's power, allowing them to check each other and not give one too much power.
Learning Objective 1E1. Assess how the distribution of powers among 3 federal branches affects policymaking.
Thanks, Mario. First, in the legislative branch, the HORS, H-O-R, House of Representatives, proposed the bill of law in debate, and once written and approved, it is sent to Senate to accept or deny. If the bill passes with a 2/3 majority vote, it is sent to the president directly involving the executive branch. The president can approve and make that bill a law outright or deny it, sending it back to the Senate for review, in which they can override the president's veto with a 2/3 majority vote. These laws can then be challenged by the judicial branch. If they are deemed unconstitutional, Congress must form an amendment to that law. Through this process, all 3 branches of the government are successfully involved in the lawmaking process. Learning Objective 1F1. Explain how and why the appropriate balance of power between national and state governments has been interpreted differently over time.
Thanks, Travis. Appropriate balance of power between national and state government has changed over time due to controversy of different states. Different states have different ideologies due to their specific cultures. Sometimes those beliefs interfere with basic human rights. However, over time, the idea of basic human rights has changed drastically. Thus, what becomes a federal right due to enumerated or implied powers versus a state right due to 10th Amendment or reserved rights has also changed drastically over time. Learning Objective F2. Analyze questions over the allocation and scope of central power within a federal structure.
Thanks, Rochelle. Okay, so within the federal structure of government, the central government takes precedence over the state governments. This was established in the court case McCulloch versus Maryland. The legislative branch makes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, and the judicial branch interprets the laws. three branches also possess different powers to make sure that the power is allocated evenly. However, the framers intended the legislative branch to be the most powerful, but the judicial branch gained power in the court case Marbury versus Madison, where they were able to deem laws unconstitutional through judicial review. The executive branch also can use his pen to bypass Congress and can veto their suggestions. At first, the government had dual federalism, which kept the power of the central government in its own domain, but New Deal programs led the American government to lead with a cooperative federalism in which the Federalist and state governments worked together to pass legislations.